And all right, so let's do a quick recap. First day we talk about data types, right? We have some built-in data types such as strings, um, integers, floats, and booleans in Python. All right, then we explore some of the easier functions like your print, your input, and some casting functions such as your str and your int, right? And then yesterday, when we explored a bit more about Python, we have learned about the control flow, right? So we can control the flow of the program by a few different statements. We have learned about the if statements and your loops, right? So I'm just gonna go through them really quickly over here. So the first one that I'm gonna talk about is your if statements, right? You'll always start with the if keyword, followed by a condition, okay, and then we end off with a colon, right? And after this colon, we need to leave an indentation, all right? Then you will put your actions over here. Okay, this is what we call an if statement, right? It starts with the word if. Okay, and for the moment being, right, the only way to write conditions is to use your relational operators, right? There are a few relational operators available to us. We have your equals to, not equals to, your more than equals to, less than, and less than equals to, right? So we use this to create a condition, right? A condition is it's an expression that returns a Boolean value, right? So it's either true or false, right? And that is important because with that result, we can then let the computer decide whether to do the action or not, right? Only if the condition turns out to be true, this action will be taken, all right? If your condition turns out to be false, all right, nothing would happen, right? So unless you want your computer to do something, if the condition is false, you will need to actually add a new clause called the else. All right, and notice how I actually draw this line over here to indicate that they must be of the same indentation line. All right, so when you're trying to write an else clause, all right, it must be of the same line with your previous if. Okay, and else you need to put on your columns as well, and this is where you put in your action 2. All right, and this will only happen if let's use this color, if your condition turns out to be false. Okay, so if I were to illustrate this, it is actually like a branch, right? So I will go down, then branch off over here. Okay, and this is where my if statement is, right? So I have a condition over here where I determine whether I should do action 1 if it's true, or action 2 if it's false, right? If I have the else keyword. All right, and you will notice that for an if-else statement, you will only be able to fit in 2 actions, right? For anything that has more than 2 actions, you will need to explore your Alif, right? So what is Alif? Alif means else if, right? So I have if condition 1 and then action 1, right? And I have my Alif condition 2 action 2, right? And then I have my let's say else, okay, action 3. Okay, so what's gonna happen over here is the computer is gonna go and explore and reach a branching point over here, right? Your if statement, and this is your first condition. The computer is going to evaluate this condition, and if it's true, right, if you're able to meet it, right, then it will do action 1. Okay, however, if you have failed to meet condition 1, you would actually move on to your Alif statement, right? Alif stands for else if. Okay, like I mentioned yesterday, this is else if only exists in Python for now, right? Most other languages will use else if, all right? So Python is just a bit hippie, but it's okay. This else if will then guide the program to read your second condition, okay? If this second condition is evaluated as true, then you will have your act 2, right? Which is this. And then if you have failed both conditions, all right, you will have default to action 3, right? This else over here is like the catch all. All right, it catches anything that fails all the above conditions. All right, it will definitely do act 3 if it fails condition 1 and condition 2. All right. Now, the thing to note when you're writing if, elif, else statements is this, right? The moment you have met your first condition, your remaining conditions will not be checked, right? So you have to be very careful when you're positioning the conditions. Which one do you want to check first, right? A very good example of the tortoise versus hare race is that we need to put the tie, the condition for the tie first, right? Because that's one of the least possible outcome, right? It's one of the outcome that has the lowest probability, right? And then we move on to whether the tortoise win or the hare wins, right? So that is for your if statement. Now, if statements only allow the computer to either skip the line or choose different action, right? It doesn't allow the computer to repeatedly execute the same action over and over again, okay? To do that, we need something called the loops. All right, we need to create a loop if you want a computer to repeat something over and over again. All right, and generally there are two types of loop. You have your infinite loop, and then you have your finite loop. Okay, so infinite loop is a loop that goes on forever until you manually stop it or you use your break statement to stop it, right? Or if you're going for your finite loop, that means the loop will eventually come to a stop, right? The loop will eventually be terminated, but it depends on whether do you know the number of cycles before it terminates or do you not know the number of cycles before it terminates, all right? So with that in mind, let's explore these loops, all right? Let's do a quick recap. To write an infinite loop in Python, you can use your while keyword. Right, so while is very similar to if, right? After the while keyword, you will put in your condition and then colon, right? And then action, okay? And always remember your indentation, okay? Indentation can be achieved by clicking your tab key on your keyboard, okay? The tab key. All right, so one very distinct difference between a while loop and an if statement is this, right? If statement will only do the action once if the condition is met. However, for a while loop, as long as the condition is met, right, that means the condition is true, all right, the action will be taken, okay? So the computer will execute the action over and over again as long as the condition is true. All right, so one way to stop this condition, stop this loop is to think about how to set your condition to false, right? Then it will terminate the loop. All right, now to write an infinite loop, we can simply put a true over here, right? Because true will always be evaluated as true, this action will always take place, right? So this is one way to create an infinite loop with Python, right? Using the while keyword. All right, now with this infinite loop out of the way, let's talk about how do we actually write a finite loop. Okay, let me just erase this infinite loop. Okay, let's do a finite loop. Okay, so there are two types of finite loop. One is where you actually know how many times to cycle it, right? How many times of cycle. And the other one is you don't know the number of cycles. Okay, so if you know the number of cycles, you can use a for loop, right? So one of the easiest way is to do for I in range, the number of times you want this loop to go on, let's say maybe 10 times, all right? Then you do your colon and you write your action, okay? This will run the action for 10 times, all right? And for some of you who ask, why do I use I? Why can't I use M or J? You can, all right? But I'll explain more about your for loop later on, okay? So for now, let's just stick to this syntax, right? For I in range 10, action, right? This is the number where you indicate how many times you want the cycle to go on, all right? How many times the loop needs to be executed. If you do not know how many times the cycle is going to take place, but you do know what is the condition for it to stop, then you can use a while loop. Okay, so let's say, for example, while condition is not met, right? So this is just me writing it out figuratively, right? You can then get to do action. Okay, so what can be replaced in this condition is not met location, right? You can set something like this, right? While number is not equals to, let's say, 5, right? You want the computer to get you a random dot rand in number, okay, from 1 to 10, okay? So the computer will continuously generate a random integer until it actually reaches a number of 5, okay? And when it reaches 5, this loop will stop, okay? Because this loop says as long as the number is not equals to 5, it should continue to go on, all right? So the moment you reaches 5, this will stop, okay? And since I talked about random, all right, yesterday we have also mentioned that you can import other people's code, all right, by using the keyword import, right? And we always write it at the top of the program, right? Import random, for example. Random is just one of the many modules available for us to explore Python, right? To build more sophisticated projects, okay? All right, so with that said, that's it for the recap yesterday, and I'm gonna show you the project that we have done yesterday on scissors, paper, stone, right? Remember yesterday we mentioned that besides checking for whether your player weapon is a number, right? Whether player dot is numeric equals to false, you should also check for whether it is a 1, 2, or 3, right? If your player input something that is not scissors, paper, or stone, you will want your player to input again, right? So what I add in here is an additional line of code that says while player underscore weapon dot is numeric is equals to false, or, all right, your player weapon is not equals to one string, right? Because the initial input will return a string, right? So if it's not 1 in the form of a string, all right, and it is not and it's not 2 in the form of string, and it's not 3 in the form of string, you would want the player to input again, okay? Some of you may ask, why is it and instead of or, right? So imagine this. If you are using a line of code that says or, right, that means your player weapon is not equals to 1, or player weapon is not equals to 2, or player weapon is not equals to 3, right? If your player actually chooses weapon 1, this condition would be evaluated as false, right? Because it is equals to 1, okay? However, because we use the word or over here, if you use or, the player not equals to 2 and player not equals to 3 will evaluate as true, right? And the computer would mistakenly progress this into having to input again, all right? So we need to check for your player weapon to be not equals to 1 and 2 and 3, right? If it's one of these, it's fine, right? Then this will return as false, then your while loop will not continue, okay? All right, so let's see. Can you make your code bigger? Yes, I can. Is there a way to simplify the code? With functions, we can make this shorter, but actually this is as simple as it can get, I can think of. Okay, let me just zoom in my screen a bit more. Is this better? Actually, I can't really do it this way. Let me just zoom out. Come on, plus. Okay, is this better? All right, you're welcome. Okay, cool. All right, if my font is still too small, do let me know, right? I'm gonna assign a bit more space. Okay, so this is yesterday's project on scissors, paper, stone. All right, if you have missed it, right, remember you can still go to buildonASEAN2021.com and watch the recording from there. All right. Okay, I am actually going to go into day 3 today, so I'm not going to dwell too much on this project. So I need all of you to actually create a new repo and under Python Now with turtle, I'm just gonna do this AWS training. Oops, training day 3. Okay. Okay, today we're gonna explore data structures, all right? And we're gonna explore the 4 built-in data structures, that is your list, dictionary, sets, and tuples, okay? These files, you can just click on Files button over here to close it. And for those who are new to us, we're actually using Replit as the IDE for Python because it's free to everyone. Okay, so let's provide a bit of a introduction before we jump into lists and stuff, right? Let's talk about the word data structure. So back in day one, we understand what is the meaning of data, right? So data is like information, right? Your name, your age, your height, your weight, basically anything, right? Your credit card number, all these are information, okay? And if you realize, most of us have a lot of different information, right? So let's just take, for example, currently how many participants we have. Let's see, we have 100 participants, right? And each of you have your name, your age, and your, let's say, height and weight. Okay, I don't want to talk too much about information. Let's just say I have 4 of this information. And for 100 of us here, we have 400 pieces of information, right? If I were to go through one by one, just to find out about, let's say maybe one of you guys are called Natalie's, and then I need to find out about Natalie's height. Okay, if I were to go through one by one among the 400 pieces of information, that would take up a lot of time, right? So what we can think of to make this shorter is to actually group this information together, all right, and give it a name. Let's say, for example, this is YY, which is me, right? This is my name, age, and height and width. Then we have a group that is maybe Natalie's name, age, height, and weight. Okay, now with this group available, instead of going through 400 pieces of information, I may now only go through 100 pieces of information, right? I cut the time by at least, what, 25% or more than that, right? I actually slice it by 4, right? So this is the idea of data structure, right? By grouping information together, it allows us to access data and to change these pieces of information easily, okay? So in layman term, a data structure is actually just a collection of data, right? Think of it as like a grouping of your information, okay? And there are 4 different types of built-in collection of data in Python. Okay, so let me just clear this. All right, there are 4 built-in data structures in Python. Okay, what do I mean by built-in? That means it is readily available in Python when you install Python, right? There is no need for you to import or create new data structures, right? They are your list, dictionaries, okay, your sets, as well as tuples, all right? Some people call it tuples, all right? I call it tuples, right? So these are the 4 built-in data structures. I am going to put more emphasis on the first 2, all right? The other 2, I will briefly talk about it, okay? Not that they are not important, it's just that they are not very commonly used, okay? So with that said, all right, if some of you are interested to learn more about different data structures, okay, you can actually import collections for more data structure, right? So these collections will will expose you to other data structures as well, with that we are not going to cover in this course because this is a beginner-friendly course, right? So we are just going to introduce you to the basic built-in data structures for now. Okay, let's go to lists and dictionaries, right? So how do we actually create a list in Python? For this purpose, I will actually use another website which illustrates the process of creating a list more clearly. Okay. So let's say, for example, I want to create a list. First, I give it a name, right? Just like how I create a variable. I'm just going to call it list1 for now, and I'll assign it the value of an empty square bracket. Okay, to create a list, you can use square brackets. Okay, square brackets will indicate that it is a list. And as you can see, I have now an empty list. Okay, it is perfectly fine to initialize a variable as an empty list, all right? Because you want to populate this list on a later date. Okay, so let me give you an example of where would you try to use something like this, right? Say you have a program that keeps track of the number of participants in an event, right? Maybe a race or something. When you first start off this event, obviously no one has signed on, right? No one have registered for the event. So the list would definitely be empty, right? So we initialize it to an empty list. As people would join the race along the way, right, your list will be populated and then the list will go longer and longer, right? So let's talk about how to populate this list. If I were to add some item onto the list, okay, we need to explore something called the list methods. All right, I mentioned something about this 2 days back. Sorry, for the last 2 days, right? Methods are actually functions that are exclusive to a certain data type. Okay, so I'm going to expose you to the first type, which is your list1.append. Okay, so append is a method that adds an element to the end of the list. Okay, so let's say if I want to append apple. When I do this, I would have added apple onto the list. Okay, now apple has been added. Okay, if I were to do list1.append banana, I have now added banana at the end of the list, right? Notice how it is always at the end of the list, right? This is append, okay? And notice how I use list1 dot, okay? I'm trying to tell the computer that, hey, I want you to add this element onto this particular list, right? Which is called list1. Okay, let's add a few more items. Okay, append, cherry, excuse me. Durian. Okay, and maybe let's add one more. All right, elderberry. Okay, so this is how you populate your list, right, using the append. And if you notice, each and every element is actually given a number, right? This is what we call your index. Okay, index numbers. All right. List is an ordered collection of data. That means the order of your data entry is important, right? Which one comes first? Which ones comes second, third, fourth, and so on. All right. So if apple comes first, naturally it will take on the index number 0. Okay, this is a bit weird compared to our actual mathematics list, right? So usually when we start a list, we start with the number 1, right? Nobody would start with 0, right? In computer science, we do it a bit differently. So in list, the first item is actually represented by the index number 0. Okay, second number is 1, third number is 2, and so on. Okay, and this index number is very important, all right? I'm going to show you how we're going to use this index number to access items in a list very soon. Some of you may say that, hey, if I were to know all the information that is, if I were to create a list with all the available information, do I still have to append one by one? Answer is no, right? You don't really need to do that, right? If you know your elements beforehand, you can actually create something like this, right? So you just do list2 and let's say square brackets, all right? Let's say you have your app, bat, cat, that, it. Okay, so if you have existing information available to you when you're creating a list, you can just assign them into the square bracket like this, and the computer will know that, hey, you're trying to create a list, all right, in Python. So this is the list. Now that we have created this list, all right, we wanted to have access to this, right? Sometimes we need to use one of the elements that's inside. How do we refer to it? Okay, we can refer to it by referring to its index number. We call this the indexing. All right. So to refer to it, we need to do list one, square bracket, all right, and indicate the number that you want to get. All right, so let's say, for example, list one, I have apple, banana, cherry, and durian. I want to refer to durian, right? So durian is at index number 3, right? So list one, square bracket 3, would refer me to durian. But what do I want to do with it? Okay, if I were to print it out, I can put it inside a print function like this. And this is how I print the element that's inside the list one, which is durian. Okay, now positive numbering is not the only way to index your list. Okay, sometimes you have a very long list and you just want to refer to the number that is like maybe second from the last. All right, so if you were to do that, you will need to learn about the negative index numbers. Okay, so if positive number starts with 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, negative numbers will start from the back and it will start with -1, right? -2, -3, -4, -5, right? This is for your list one. Okay, so let's just show you an example of this. If I were to print durian, which is the second last from the list, I can do print list one square bracket -2, which gives me the same answer at durian. Okay, all right. Now let's say, for example, you don't like the durian to be in your fruit list, right? So I am going to remove it. How do I remove it? We can pop it. So there, I'm going to expose you to another method called list one dot pop. Okay, so pop is a method that takes in an index number, right? Which index number do you want to remove? Okay, so I can remove number 3 like this. Okay, so I will pop durian out. All right, you see that durian is no longer there. Okay, if you were to do something with this durian, let's say you want to save it somewhere that you're going to refer to it next time. Okay, you can actually assign it to a variable called removed or whatever you want to name it, right? This is just an arbitrary name, right? And you will see that durian is actually saved in this variable. All right, so let me explain what is happening over here. When you use pop, not only are you removing the element from the list, right? You are actually taking it and it will return to you as that particular element, right? So when you do pop 3, this line of code over here will return durian to you. Okay, what do you want to do with it? You can save it in a variable. You can even print it out if you want to. Okay, let's say, for example, I want to print my pop. Okay, it will be durian as well because durian is selected to be pop. Okay, and let's say maybe you want to insert back your durian. Let's say for some reasons you want durian to be back inside and you want it to be exactly at the third index number. So how do you do that? If you do append, let's say if I do list one dot pop, sorry, not this one dot append durian. All right, this will add durian at the end of the list. Okay, however, you want to preserve that alphabetical order and you want durian to be at the fourth position, all right, occupying your third index number, you can use your, doesn't seem to work in your ID. Yufeng, I'll come to you later on. Okay, so so for this to work, okay, we need to use a different method called insert. Okay, now insert is a method that allows you to, like the word suggests, insert an element at a specific index position. Okay, so if you were to indicate the index position that you want the element to be inserted, let's say maybe 3, then it will be inserted at the position number 3. Okay, let's try it out with a negative number. All right, so -2. Right, now if you do -2, it will appear a bit differently, right? So apparently when you are trying to insert something, right, at a position -2, the computer would think that you want to insert in front of it, okay, like this. Okay, whereas if you insert it with a positive number, all right, it will always be at the the index position that you want. All right. Now, you it's okay to for not to remember this. It's perfectly fine. All right. You just realize you can just do this when you're doing your project, right? By trial and error. Okay. If you realize that, oh, -2 is not going to put it in the correct position, you can change it to -1. Okay. It is not fatal, right? Perfectly fine to not remember some things, right? Because there are a lot of things that we need to remember. Okay. So there are the three methods that we have explored, right? Your append, your pop, and your insert. Okay, now let's talk about how to actually replace elements in a list. Okay, lists can be replaced, right? The elements in the list can be changed readily. Let's say, for example, you don't like durian. Okay, you want it to be dragon fruit instead. So the first thing you should do is you will need to refer to it. Okay, let's say index number 3. Okay, this is me pointing at the durian's element. Okay, and I can assign a new value by saying dragon fruit. Aha, see? Now my durian has been changed to dragon fruit. Okay, simple as that. Okay, you can assign it to, you can use this indexing to refer to the element at that particular index position and assign a new value to it. Okay, so all this while I have been using strings as an example of elements in the list, right? Can you store numbers in a list? Let's try it out. Okay, let's say maybe I have 99. Perfectly fine. If I want to store Boolean, no problem. Okay, anything can be an element inside the list. Okay, so I'm just going to do it with dragon fruit because it makes more sense. All right, now let's say, for example, you want to know how long is your list. Okay, we as programmers, we're not just gonna go one by one, right? Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? We shouldn't do that, okay? Because we're using the computers to help us with that, all right? So let's just do that by using a new function that we're gonna call len, length. All right, so length as a function takes in an argument as it suggests over here. All right, and inside this bracket, this is where you can put in your list. All right, and the computer would then go through this list and return to you the number of elements that is in this list, right? Okay, the number of elements will determine the length of the list. So if I were to print this out, you would be able to see 5. Okay, and this is because there are 5 elements in my list 1. Okay. All right. So let's move on to some other things like how do we actually add them together, right? So let's say you want to add both lists together. Okay, very easily put. Let's say you just do it list 1 plus list 2, and you want it to be saved in a certain variable called added list, let's say. Okay, this will be how you have concatenate both lists together, right? So lists and strings are kind of alike, right? They're quite similar in a way that when you use the plus operator, they will just join them up back to front like that. Okay, and it also depends on which is the one that you position on the left when you're writing it, right? So currently I put my list 1 first, right? So obviously list 1 is going to be the one in front, and list 2 is going to be concatenated at the end of list 1. All right, if I reverse this order, you will see that, hey, this one is now in front where list 2 is behind. Okay, so this is concatenation of lists. All right, and let me show you one more thing to do with lists. Sure. All right, so I'm just gonna remove all this, maybe up to this point. Okay, so I have 2 lists over here. The next thing that I want to introduce to you guys is slicing. All right, So slicing, as name suggests, is me trying to slice a section of the list and maybe save it somewhere. All right. So let's say I want to only have banana and durian. Okay. I am trying to slice from this point all the way to this point. Okay. How do you write a slicing uh, line? Okay. We need to use this slicing operator. Okay. Which is a square bracket indicated by, square bracket, and then there's a colon inside. Okay. Now this part may be a bit confusing, so I'm going to go a bit slower. So let's say this one slice, okay? If I do not indicate any number inside this slicing operator, okay, what is going to happen is this will slice the entire list from start to end, right? So apple, banana, cherry, durian, elderberry will completely be sliced, okay, if you have no numbers inside, right? Because the default is start and then end, all right, followed by a step of 1. However, if I start with 1 and then I slice all the way to the end, can you see that banana it will start with banana, apple is no longer present, right? Because I have sliced it from index position 1 onwards, right? I have sliced it from here onwards, okay? Now, the second part is where I indicate my end, all right? This is the tricky part. So for slicing, it will slice to the end, but not including the number that you have indicated, all right? What do I mean by that? Let's say if I put the number 4, all right, you'll realize that it will only print banana, cherry, and durian. Elderberry, which is at index position number 4, is not included. All right, so this is where we usually call it the slicing of up to but not including. Okay, so 4, I stopped here right in front of 4, and that's it. And this is where I end my slice. Okay, all right, so this is slicing. Now, I am going to make this a bit more confusing by introducing the third element. Okay, so besides having the start and the end, you can also indicate the stepped. All right, so let's say if I use 2, I will only have banana and durian. What do I mean by that? By default, the step is 1. All right, that means I'm going to slice from 1 to 4. All right, and every index number, when it increased by 1, I will also take it. Okay, this is by default. However, when I indicate the number 2, it will only take elements with a step of +2. So let's say, for example, 1, I start with index number 1. This is being recorded in the list. And then I will +2, right? Which goes to index number 3 right now, right? And I'll get durian. All right, so cherry is skipped. If I have a number 5 over here, all right, and I stop somewhere at the end, this will also move on to number 5 and get it. Okay, I'm going to show you the example right now. Okay, let's say maybe I want to add a bit more stuff. This one, the pen. What's an F fruit? Maybe just call it fruit because I can't think of any. All right, this one, the pen. Guava. Okay, so this has gotten a bit longer. And if I were to slice all the way to 6, all right, you'll be able to see that banana, durian, fruit will be in your slice selection. Okay, so this is me doing slicing. Okay, so slicing can be used on a list. It can also be used on a string, which I'm going to show later on, all right? But I'm not going to jump straight into that yet, all right? Let's just let this sink in first, right? So this is slicing. Now, where would slicing come into play in lists, all right? Why do I want to teach this to you guys? So there is a very peculiar behavior of list in Python. Let's say, for example, I have list 3 is assigned the value of list 1. Okay, now if you realize, okay, I need to actually remove this so that it's not too confusing. You realize that both this 1 and this 2 and this 3 actually refers to the same object. the same object. Okay, so if I were to change list 3, okay, let's say maybe list 3, list 3, I want to change it to dragon fruit. Okay, you realize that, hey, this one has changed as well, right? Even though I just want to change list 3, okay, this one has actually changed as well. Okay, it will actually print dragon fruit. All right, this is because technically speaking, when you do list 3 is equals to list 1 in this manner over here, when you assign the value of list 1 to list 3, you are just assigning it by pointing it to the computer's memory at this point. Okay, if you want to create a copy of list 1, you should slice it from start to end. Okay, and then in that case, list 3 is now a totally separate object compared to list 1. And when you change the fourth element inside the list, right, which is index number 3, you are now changing the element of list 3 instead of list 1, right? List 1 remains unchanged. Okay, this is useful when you want to create a new list and change the new list. Okay, to not disturb the initial list. All right, so with this said, let me just go through some exercises so that we can warm ourselves up to this list. Okay, so let's go to Rebel. Yeah, for those who are interested to know more about list methods, you can also go to W3 Schools, like one of the websites that have all this documented quite easily for you guys, right? You can just click on some of these to explore, right? There are a lot more other methods that are not covered in this course, right? More importantly is your append, pop, and insert. Once you have mastered these 3 methods, you don't really need the rest, actually. Okay, let me just take a look at the chat real soon. This won't display when I run the program. I'm actually not too sure what is wrong with your code, Yufeng. Maybe you can try to create a list like this on list 2 and see if it works. It looks correct to me. Process finish with exit code 0. Okay. All right, so we are going to do a bit of an exercise using lists. Okay, so the first one is what I would call the mean or the average. Let's say we want to calculate the average of some numbers. Okay, so let's write this program. All right, so let's say, for example, I want this program to, all right, get an input from user. Maybe you can try using Replit instead, Yufeng. Okay, so get an input from user on the number of numbers, right? That means how many numbers do you want to average, right? And then I also want to get an input, get as many input as indicated by the number of numbers, right? So that means if my if my user is going to indicate that, hey, I need to have 10 numbers, right? So I will get the user to type in these 10 numbers for me, right? And once I've gotten these 10 numbers, I am going to calculate the average of these 10 numbers. Okay, for example, this amount of numbers. Okay, so we can do something as very simple like this. Okay, so to get an input from the user, okay, we need to input, okay, how many numbers do you want to average? Okay, so this will get me a number. let's call this number of nums. Okay, it will give me a number of numbers, and while the number of numbers dot is numeric is equals to false, right? That means I'm telling the computer that, hey, if the number of numbers given by the user is not number, right, it's not numeric in nature, okay, you can do this or either do while not. Okay, depending on which is easier for you to understand, right? Because if I use a not operator over here, whatever that is true will turn out to be false. Okay, and when it is false, the while loop will stop. So it's perfectly fine. Okay, so I'm just going to do this. While not is numeric, I am just going to get the computer to input again. Okay, and the moment this input is correct, I am going to make it into a integer, right, using our casting function. All right, so this is going to generate a number of numbers. So now, if I know how many numbers are going to be put into this particular number, we just need to use for I in range of this num of nums. Okay, now what do I use for I in range over here? Because we're gonna ask the computer, we're gonna ask the user a number of times depending on the number given over here, right? So I'm gonna repeatedly ask for the input, right? Please key in your number 1, please key in your number 2, and so on, okay? So I'm gonna do this, print, please key in number I plus 1. Okay, use the F strings. All right. And then we're gonna get the input. All right, so I don't need to indicate any questions because key in number here. Okay, maybe a key in number here. Okay, and we're gonna save this as part of the list. Okay, so every time a number is being keyed in, I want to append it into the list, right? I want to generate a list of numbers first. So what am I going to do over here is I am actually going to save this inside num, right? A variable called num. And of course, I'm going to do the same check, right? While not num dot is numeric, I want to show all this again. All right. Why do I want to put in this num again? It's because I want the computer to check again. All right. As long as the number is not a numeric, I want you to check again. All right. And once the num has been made into it, has been confirmed to be an integer, I will now append this to the list. Okay. But what list is that? All right. I am going to create an empty list over here at the very top. Let's call this, oops, sorry, maybe even before num of nums actually existed. Let's call this a list of numbers. Okay, and this is an empty number, right? Because the list has not been, the numbers have not been selected yet, right? So this is still an empty list. Okay, so once the number has been decided, I am just going to do a list underscore of nums dot append, all right? And what am I appending? The integer version of the number given. All right. So at the end of this for loop, I would have expect the list of numbers to have grown, all right, by a certain number. Okay. If there's 10 numbers, there will be 10 numbers in the list. Okay. And after that, once I have gotten all these numbers, I will just need to calculate the average of it. Right. So how do I calculate the average of numbers? First, I will need to add up all the numbers, right? So I'm going to go through each and every element, add them up, and then we would divide it by the total number of elements that's inside the list. Okay, so to go through each and every element, all right, we need to learn the for loop. Okay, so let's go through what is the for loop. Remember yesterday we talked about for I in range 10 to get the computer to actually run 10 times. Okay, what is happening over here is actually this, right? This is what we call a loop variable. Okay, maybe I should change color. Loop variable. Okay, and this range 10 actually generates a sequence of number, right? All the way from 0, which is the default starting number, up to 10, but not including 10, right? Very similar to slicing. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, go through one by one. So what is going to happen over here is we have a loop variable called I, and it is going to take in the numbers, all right, one by one, okay, and at the end of the first iteration, it will then move on to the second iteration, right? Every iteration, okay, let me just spell it out, iteration. Okay, iteration means one cycle of the loop being executed. All right, one iteration means the loop has gone through one full cycle. All right, so after your first iteration has been finished, okay, your I will no longer be equals to 0. It will now be 1 instead. Okay, and then go through your third iteration, fourth iteration, fifth iteration, and so on. All right, it will go through one by one to be put inside the loop variable. Okay, now if I were to use a for loop with a list, okay, let's say maybe for num in list of nums, all right, like this, what's going to happen is I'm going to temporarily have a variable called num, and depending on what are the numbers that's inside the list, it will be iterated one by one as the loop variable. Okay, so let's say maybe this is 10, 28, 99, 10, all right? During the first iteration, all right, your num will be 10. Okay, and when the first iteration ends, you would move on to the second one, which is 28. Okay, so we are going to use this method to go through each and every element and add them up together to form a sum of numbers, right? We want it to get a total of these numbers first before we average them out. Okay, so another way of writing this is, so let's go through this. We need to generate the sum, right? So naturally, the sum starts with 0, right? The variable is 0. And then we're going to go through the numbers in the list of numbers, right? So for num in list of nums, okay, now this number over here, all right, this num can be any variable name, okay? I can even call it name, right? Or I can even call it lil num. Okay, this is just an arbitrary name number. Arbitrary name variable. But I'm gonna name this as num because it makes more sense to me. And I am going to do sum is plus equals to num. All right, what's going to happen over here is I'm going to go through each and every element in the list and I'm going to add them up into my sum. Okay, but my sum is in a different color, so this is actually a keyword, so I can't use the word sum. So maybe I just use sum of nums. All right. Okay. All right. And at the end of the day, once I've added up all of this, I will just print the average of these numbers are the sum of numbers, okay, divided by the length of the list of numbers. Right? So this is how you get the average of numbers, right? You get the total, the summation. Let's say maybe I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So I get 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 to have a number that's 15. And I have 15 divided by the total number of elements in the list, right? Which is 5 right now. So the average should be 3. Okay, so let's try this out and see if our program is correct. So I run it. How many numbers do you want to average? Let's say 5. Okay, key number 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so the average of these numbers are 3.0, which is exactly as what I've written over here. Okay, of course, you can test it out with even more numbers to see if it's correct. Okay, so this is an average number using the list in our favor. Okay, now, of course, there are ways to make this shorter. All right, you feel free to explore. But here, I purposely use this example to explore the list method, the data structure of list. All right, and to use this for loop with you guys as well, right? We can use a for loop to run through each and every element in the list. Okay, so let me take a look at the chat. Does the letter I have a meaning or just commonly used for loops? The letter I is a commonly used letter for loops, yes. There is no specific meaning to it. It's just commonly used. Some people will refer it to as an index, which I will explain later. I will also go through another form of using for loop in lists. Okay, so before we go on to the break, all right, I'm just going to show you something real quick on for loops. I realize that I may have skipped this a bit and it may be unfair to some of you. I'm sorry for that. Let me just show you guys what happens when you use a for loop over an list. Okay, so if I were to for loop over list. Okay, let's say I have a list 1 over here that contains apple, banana, cherry, durian, elderberry, fruit, and guava, right? So for element in this 1, right, I can print each and every element. Okay, and you will realize that it will print 1 by 1. Now, why is that so? Okay, because during the first iteration, okay, when I create an element like this, okay, during the first iteration, it will be my apple, right? This is the first iteration. So when my element contains the word apple, when I print it, naturally apple will be printed, right? So let's move on to my second iteration. Now apple is no longer needed. I have moved on to banana, right? Banana will now be my element instead. Okay, so when I print element, it will print banana. Okay, so you get the idea of how this works, right? Why do I use for num in list of nums to get the sum, right? Because we have to go through each and every element to add them up together, right? And then if I move on to the third element, okay, it will be cherry, okay, and fourth, and so on. Okay, so this is for element in list. We usually call it a reference by elements over here in this case. Is the list here the same as array? Yes. Okay. Some other languages use array. Let's say maybe JavaScript. Okay, but in Python they use list. Okay. So time now is 5:01. Let's take a short break. All right. While you guys saying this in, I am going to go back here. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna leave this code here for you guys. Okay. Maybe I think it's good if I just leave it like this. Okay. Could you show the first line? Yeah. Okay, I can maybe minimize the spaces. Okay. Now there are students who ask me why do I introduce spaces unnecessarily, right? So if I were to remove all the spaces like this, yes, I would be able to fit everything in one page. But good luck seeing it. Well, at least the color coding doesn't make it look too bad. All right, so I'm gonna leave this here for like 5 minutes. I'm gonna go get some water, and in the meanwhile, please do stretches. Okay, you are not supposed to sit in front of the computer for more than an hour straight. All right, that's what my physiotherapists always tell me. Okay, See you guys in 5 minutes, right? Okay. Yufeng, when you have type error, that means you are trying to use an operator on a string object that is not an integer. Okay. So let's say, for example, when I use input, input always returns a string, right? So before you actually use it to perform any mathematical operations, you must use int to cast it into an integer first. Okay. Let's say, for example, when you do 8 plus 8, this will give you type error. All right, because a string cannot be added to a number. Okay, this is what type error means. Okay, so I am going to move on now to teach you guys more methods on how to create this, okay, and to make this even more meaningful. So let's see. Let's move on to our Python tutor. Okay, besides using square brackets, okay, we can also create a list using the list constructor function. Okay, let me show you what I mean by that. I'm gonna comment all this out. Actually, I can just remove this. So let's say I have a word apple, and I want to convert this into a list. Okay, I can simply use the list word over here. All right, and I will just save this in a variable called maybe a string. Okay, maybe just call it list one. All right. When you use list as a function, it will break up the entire string, all right, and assign each and every letter as a element itself. Okay, so this is list function. Okay, not only can we use this to break down a string, we can also use the list function in conjunction with range. Remember how range actually creates a sequence of numbers? All right, so if I were to do range 10, okay, I will have 0 to 9, all right, all in its list, okay? And you get to see that each number is being represented by the same index number, right? Okay, now this is very important for the next part of this course, okay? Because we're gonna show you how to use this range 10 and for loop together to allow you to make some changes to an element, okay? Now, what I'm going to do over here is, let's see. Okay, I want back my guava. All right, cool. Guava is back. So if I want to change something, okay, if I want the computer to go through each and every element in the list, okay, and help me find out where is the durian. I want to change the durian. Okay, if I do something like this, right, for lm in this one, if lm is equals to durian, all right, and then I say please let lm be a new element called dragon fruit. Okay, now apparently when I run this code over here, the durian remains the same. Okay, it hasn't changed, right? Even though technically speaking, this line over here tells the computer that, hey, I want you to go through each and every element in the list. If the element that you're going through is a durian, I want you to assign this dragon fruit value to the element. Okay, but why is it not changing? Okay, now there's a reason to this. Remember how lm is just a loop variable? Okay, so this is lm. Okay, it is just a temporary loop variable. When you assign a new value to it called dragon fruit, are you doing anything to the list? No, right? You're not doing anything to the list. You are just changing the loop variable and that's it. Okay, so if you were to make changes to a list, you need to refer to its index number, right? So what we can do over here is we need to generate a sequence of numbers that can allow us to go through each and every one of these elements by referring to its index number. Okay, what do I mean by that? Okay, let me just drop this. Okay, and then rewrite the for loop. Okay, so I can do for I in range of, now if I were to count one by one, all right, I would know that, oh, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, oh, I have 7 items. I will put for I in range 7 over here. Okay, technically, you're not wrong, right? It's fine. But imagine this, when you have a list that is very long in the future, right? Are you going to count one by one? No, right? We have computers here to help us out, right? So earlier we have learned that there is a function that helps us to a function that returns us the length of the list, right? That tells us how long is our list. So we can use that to our advantage, right? So we use for I in range length of the list one. Okay, so what's going to happen over here is this length of this one is going to return us a number, which in this case is going to be 7. All right, and then range 7 will create us a sequence of number 0, 1, 2, oops, sorry, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, 7 numbers, just nice to represent each and every element. Okay, so this is a very commonly used idiom. Okay, they call it idiom. Okay, so this is a very commonly used idiom, right? For I in range of length of the list. Okay, that means I will go through each and every one of this. Okay, and then we're gonna do this, right? If list one square bracket I is equals to, let's say I want to change fruit, right? Is equals to fruit. Okay, I want you to change list one square bracket I to maybe fig. Okay, now you will see that, hey, my list has changed. All right, what's going on over here? If I were to go through each and every one of this list one, okay, I have these numbers, right? With these numbers, this I is going to take the number of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, depending on the number of iteration, right? Depending on which iteration it is on right now. So when it is your first iteration, your I is going to be 0, right? Now, is this 1 0 equals to fruit? Nope, it's not, right? So I don't have to do anything. Okay, then you'll move on to 1, 2, 3, 4, and finally at 5, you have your fig, right? Sorry, you have your fruit. You found it, right? And once you found it, you want to assign a new value to it. Okay, so this one, square bracket I, you want to assign it with fig. Okay, now because we are in a for loop, this will not stop until you have gone through every single one of them, right? Even though this is checked, you will still move on to the next one. Okay, unless you want a computer to stop, you can just tell break. All right, then the computer would stop the loop. The moment it found fruit and change it with fig, it will stop the loop. Okay, if you use a break like this. Okay, so this is how you exchange a character, all right, by referring to its index. Now let's do a quick exercise on this, all right? I am pretty sure that you guys have heard of a fizz buzz exercise before, right? Have you guys heard of fizz buzz or buzz? All right. So the idea is this, right? I would have, I generate numbers from 1 to 100, okay? And then replace the numbers divisible by 3 with fizz, okay? And then I would replace the numbers divisible by 5 with buzz, okay? And last but not least, if the numbers are divisible by 15, I will replace it with fizz buzz. Okay, quite commonly used to practice stuff. Okay, so first thing first, let's generate numbers from 1 to 100. Okay, so to do that, we will just do range 1 to 101. Okay, now why do I do this instead of 100? Okay, let me just show you range 100. Okay, and because we're gonna do some replacement, we're gonna need this to be in a list, right? Okay, and then I'm gonna call this num list. Okay, let's see what is num list right now. Oh, of course it's empty, it's not print. Okay, at this point, you realize that, hey, I don't have 1 to 100. I only have 0 to 99, okay? Because range by default starts at 0. So if you want to have 1, you need to have 1 inside. And because it stops at 100, it doesn't include 100. Okay, so if you want to include 100, you make sure it is 101. Right, so when I print this, it'll be 200. Okay, now just a short detour on the range function. Right, it's very similar to slicing as well. Right, you have your start, your end, and there is also a third input where you can indicate the step. Okay, so let's say if I indicate 3. Oops. Okay, it will only generate numbers from 1 to 100, 1 to 100 by 3, sorry, by an increment of 3, right? That means 1 plus 3, 4, plus 3, 7, plus 3, 10, and so on. Okay, so if I don't indicate the step, by default, it will be 0. Sorry, by default, it will be 1. Okay, by default, it will be 1. Okay, so we have generated a list of numbers, right? The next thing to do is to find out which is divisible by 3, which is divisible by 5, and which is divisible by 15. Okay, so let's do this. For I in range of the length of num list, oops. Okay, all right. So first thing first, let's find out about fizz. All right, so if if num underscore list, why do I always keep bracket? List at I is perfectly divisible by 3 equals to 0. Okay, I would then replace it with fizz. Okay, very similarly, okay, I can do an Alif. Alif, if it's divisible by 5, we call it the buzz. Okay, and the last one, Alif divisible by 15, actually 3 and 5. Okay, not 15, it's actually 3 and 5. That means it's both divisible by 3 and 5, right? So if divisible by 3 is equal to 15 and num is square bracket I divisible by 5 is equals to 0. Okay. This square bracket I is assigned the value of fizz buzz. All right. So once this is done, let's just try to print the num list again to see what happens and to see if it's correct. Right. So I run this. Then, okay. My 3 is fizz. Okay. 5 is buzz. Okay. 6 is fizz. This is correct. But I don't see any fizz buzz around. Okay. So remember what we talked about if, elif, and else, all right? When we write if, elif, okay, it is very important that the hardest condition to meet should be at the very top, okay? Because what happens over here is the moment the computer detects that the number is divisible by 3, all right, it will immediately be fizz, right? There is no chance to check if it's also divisible by 5 to consider fizz buzz, right? So we need to exchange this position with the one at the very top. Okay, so I'm just gonna do this, paste it here. All right, and the one that's on top, I would paste it here instead. Okay, so now when we run it, it should be correct. Okay, so 60, which is both divisible by 3 and 5, will be fizz buzz. Okay, so this is the fizz buzz project. All right. So whenever you find yourself wanting to replace something in a list, you would use this method, right? For I in range, right, of the length of the list, okay, and you check through to see which actually meets the condition that you want, and then you replaced it, okay? Now, the next part is, let's see, maybe I'll do a bit of strings. Okay, so I think we can move on to dictionaries for now. I think we're quite done with this. We can do a bit more exercise on this. Let me see. Okay, let's see, list. Oh, nesting. Okay, so let's talk a bit about nesting. It is quite possible that you can store a list inside a list. Okay, let me just remove this. Say for example, list 1 at your 6th position, I want you to have another new list. Call your lib app. Okay, so basically what's going on over here is I have maybe 3. It's easier to see. Okay, so basically the idea is this, right? I have a list inside another list. Okay, this is what we call a nested list. Now this is quite possible because if you notice matrices in mathematics, all right, you have your numbers like this, right? 8, 9, 8, 7, 5, 7, 6, 6, 6. All right, so let's say for example, this is like a matrix, right? A 3 by 3 matrix, okay? If you look carefully, it's actually a list within a bigger list. Okay, so this is the first element, second element, and the third element. And within each of these individual lists, you have your first element, second element, and your third element. First, second, third. First, second, third. Okay, this is what we call a nested list, right? A list inside a list. Okay, so how do we then refer to something that's nested within a list? All right, what we can do over here is we need to simply go one level deeper, right? Let's say, for example, if I refer to index number 3, this is me referring to the list at index position 3, right? But I have not indicate which index position of this particular list I want to refer to. Let's say if I want to refer it on cat, all right, I would then need to indicate square bracket index position number 2. Okay, so if I were to print this, you will be able to see cat. All right, if I just print list square bracket 3, this will actually return the entire list that I'm referring to right now, which is this list over here. Okay, if I were to refer to a single element that's within this list that I'm referring, I need to go one level deeper, all right, like square bracket 2. Okay, this will give me cat. Okay, now how many levels of nesting can there be? All right, there is no fixed number of this, right? You can nest however much you want, right? So you can get the general idea that if you have a deeper level of nesting, then you need more square brackets to access the element that's inside. Oops, sorry. Okay, so basically that's it, right? That's the idea. When you see this error, index error, string index out of range, that means you are trying to refer to an index that is not existent, right? That is non-existent. So let's say, for example, this 3 is over here, 2 is over here, but because 2 is not a list, there is no way you can get index number 2 out of the cat, right? So this is where you will get your index error. Quite frequently happen when you are dealing with lists. Okay, so I'm gonna remove all this, right? So that is nesting. Okay, so let's talk about dictionaries. Okay, so I think we are okay with this so far. Concatenation, slicing, methods, everything is okay. So let's talk about dictionaries, right? What are dictionaries? So dictionaries are represented by a curly braces. Okay, before that, let me take a look at the chat. What are some in real world instances where metrics or nested lists are used in programs? One instance that I can think of is your screen, right? So a monitor screen is actually made up of your horizontal pixels and your vertical pixels, right? And each and every pixel, right, is actually made up of three more colors, right? Your R, G, and your B, right? And each of these have its own value. Okay, so these are matrices. Okay, it involves metrics inside. And the other one that I can think of is you will see a lot of matrices in data science. All right, where you try to draw the connection between different information. Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at dictionary. So list is an ordered collection of information, right? So list is ordered, okay, in a way that these numbers are important, right? These index numbers are important. Now, dictionaries, on the other hand, right, don't really care too much about the order, but dictionaries care about the key that is related to. Okay, so let me show you real quick how to create a dictionary. Dictionary one is like this. Okay, you use a curly brackets to indicate that it is a dictionary. Right over here, you see that it is an empty dictionary. Okay, so when do we actually use dictionary? Now, let's try to use your contact numbers as an example for this, right? Now, imagine if your phone, right, the list of contacts is actually made up of lists. If you were to call a friend, right, let's say maybe Sam, okay, my friend is Sam, and you forgot when do you actually save this number, right? You have to think about, in which order did I save his number? Was he the 50th or the 56th, right? That wouldn't make sense, right? Because you have to recall all this, right? So that is where dictionary comes into place, right? Using dictionary, if you just look for the name Sam, you will be able to get its phone number, right? So in dictionary, the information is stored in what we call the key value pair. All right, so this Sam over here is our key, and this 888 will be the value. All right, what is the value that's being held by this particular key? All right, so let me show you an example of how this dictionary works. Okay, so let's say, for example, this dictionary have a name, okay, and the name is YY. And this dictionary also has age, and the age is, let's say, maybe 30, okay. Then besides this, you have other information as well, like maybe number of cats, let's say number of cats, okay, also 30, right? You'll be able to see that, hey, you can store a lot of different information in the dictionary, all right, and they are all related to the key value pair. Okay, so if you want to obtain a certain information, let's say, for example, you want to find out about dictionary one's name, okay, instead of referring to its index number, you should index the key instead, right? Refer to the particular key. In this case, it is name. Okay, if I were to print this, this will give me YY. All right, and of course, if I were to print the number of cats, this will also print 30. Okay, so remember this, right? For dictionaries, we don't index the index number, we index it by its key. All right, so that also means you cannot use methods like append, right? There is no such thing as append anymore, right? And how do you then add items onto the dictionary if there's no append? There is two ways you can do that. The first way is to actually indicate a new key. Let's say maybe number of dogs. Okay, and I assign it a new value of, sorry, I can't use minus sign over here. Let's do, I have like 10 dogs. Okay. As you can see, I've successfully added a line over here, right? I've added new information onto the dictionary. Besides doing this, you can also do dict1 dot update. Okay, you can also update this by giving it a key value pair, right? So you first need to indicate your key, which is, let's say, maybe let's say number of consoles. And then you need to provide the value, which is, let's say, maybe I have like, how many consoles do I have? PS4, Switch, 2. Okay. Dictionary sequence 0 is line 0, 2 is required. Let's see. Oh, I think I should use this instead. Let's see. Cannot convert dictionary update to 0. Oh, did I remember this wrongly? Let me check. Oops, sorry. Okay. Okay. Got it. Okay, sorry, I remember this wrongly. It should be written like this. Num consoles equals to 2. Don't follow exactly though. Oh, okay. Can. All right. Okay, let me just take a look at Junwei's image first. Line number 9. You need to have your range insert over here, Junwei. Num of nums, you need to add in your length. Length of nums. Over here on your line 9. Okay, name error, date 1 is not defined. You need to define it over here. Even if you define it like this, you have that error you found. Okay. Okay. The other way to update your, okay, maybe you should try to use a different ID instead. I'm not sure with PyCharm. I haven't really used PyCharm before. Okay, so for dictionary 1, if you were to update it, let's say maybe a new key, let's say number of consoles, all right, you assign it with a value of 2, it will appear like this. All right, now for me, I feel like dictionary 1 index with a new key and assign a new value is easier to understand than the the way of dictionary 1 update. Okay, but dictionary update actually allows you to update a few keys at the same time. All right, let's say maybe you want to update more than just number of consoles equals to 2. Okay, you also want to update your let's say sorry, new a variable, let's say call likes basketball. Okay, I can also equals to true. Right, this allows you to add in multiple keys into your dictionary by using the update. All right, and not only does it allow you to update multiple keys, let's say for example, you have a second dictionary. Okay, you have the second dictionary. Okay, let's give it a random stuff by key key 1, value 1, key 2, value 2. Okay, so I have generated a, colon. All right, a second dictionary over here. If I were to update my first dictionary by adding a second dictionary onto it, I can do dictionary1 dot update dictionary2. This will add my dictionary2 onto my dictionary1. Okay, and very important thing to note, all right, for your key value pair, it is indicated by a colon, right? Key colon value. Okay, it is always in this particular manner, right? Key colon value. Okay, this is a key value pair. All right. Okay, what is the next thing to talk about? Dictionaries. So besides updating, right, of adding stuff onto your dictionary, you can also remove stuff by using the pop method, right? Apparently pop is still around for besides having to use it on list, but instead of popping the index number, you need to pop your key, right? So in this case, it is key1 dot pop. All right, let's say if I want to remove key1, I'll just pop it like this, right? And key1 will be removed. Okay, of course, this pop function also returns you a value that allows you to save this somewhere else, right? Let's say maybe you want to save it in a variable, you can do remove like this. Okay. Right, so value 1 is now saved in your remove variable. Okay, now if you realize when you use the pop method, okay, and you do it on key 1, what is being returned to you is the value instead of the key. Okay, it doesn't return you the key, it returns you only the value. Okay, same thing for when you refer to the key as well. Okay, let's say for example, I were to print dictionary1 at the key of name. This will only print my value at the key name. All right, it wouldn't print the key together with it. It will only print you the value. All right, so what happens if you want to get both the key and the value? All right, so there is such a thing called dictionary one dot items. So this dot items method returns you a sequence of items. Let me show you. All right, let's print this out and show you easily. Okay, what's happening over here is, as you can see, there is a dictionary items over here, right? This is what we call a view object. It allows you to see what's inside, all right? Now, this is not a list, not a dictionary, all right? It is basically showing you a collection of your key value pair, right? In the form of a tuple. Okay, whenever you see brown parentheses like this is a tuple. Okay, it will present to you in a form of key value collection pair in a tuple form like this. Okay, name, comma, y. Okay, when you see round brackets like this is what we call a tuple. Okay, what is the difference between a tuple and a list? Okay, a tuple is almost like a list, right? Where you can refer to it with its index number, but the information that's inside you cannot change. Remember how we can use list 1 square bracket 0, assign a new value, let's say app. Remember how we can use this to change certain elements in a list? You cannot do this with a tuple. Okay, because tuples are immutable. You cannot change anything that's inside a tuple. All right, so this is how you get your items. All right, now why is this important is when you run a for loop using a dictionary, okay, remember how we use for lm in list to print out all the different elements that's inside the list, right? Now, if you're gonna do for LM in dictionary, okay, you realize that what am I printing is actually the the keys over here, right? Let me just remove this print name so that it's not so confusing. I am printing all the keys inside my dictionary one. Okay, so when you're using a for loop against a dictionary, right, using a for loop to iterate through a dictionary, you will only refer to its keys. All right, so how do we then print out the values? Okay, I am going to show you using the F key over here. Sorry, not F key, F strings, right? So I am going to show you that the key, all right, that is your LM. Okay, maybe we should just change this name to key instead so that it's not so confusing. All right, the key is holding the value of, all right, remember how we can refer to a value held by the key? We can simply refer to it by typing out dictionary one square bracket the key. All right, so this is me trying to get my computer to refer to the value that is held by this particular key. All right, so when I print this out on the screen, I'll be able to see that. Okay, let me show you with a bigger, okay, I think this is better. All right, you'll say that the key name is holding the value YY. The key age is holding the value 30, right? It will go through one by one, printing out all the keys and all the values that are being held by these particular keys. Okay, this is how I usually do it, right? Without using any of the methods, right? Without using my dot items, right? Or dot values or dot keys. Okay, so for key in dictionary one, we can do the key is holding the value of dictionary one square bracket key. All right. Now, one thing to note is when you are creating a dictionary, try to always use a string as your key. All right. The general idea is they require you to use an immutable object as the key. All right. But to understand mutability, it can be a bit confusing, right? Integers, your tuples, they are immutable. But if you don't want to go through uh, that muddle understanding of mutability, just remember that your keys, you will always use strings. That's the safest way, all right? For your values, it can be anything, all right? You can store numbers, you can store strings, you can store lists, you can store dictionaries even inside the values of a dictionary. Okay, so let me take a look at the chat. Okay, thanks for the lesson. You never move. Okay, I'll see you. Okay, bye. Um, is the symbol between date one and name equal sign? Yes, right? Basically, I am assigning this to a variable called dictionary one, right? So when okay, maybe I should just zoom in. When I use a curly braces like this is me trying to create a dictionary object, all right? But if you are just going to create a dictionary object and you don't assign it to a variable, it is not going to be stored in the computer's memory, right? So we use the assignment operator to save it in a variable called dictionary one, okay? All right, so Andrea asked about what is dictionary one dot update dictionary two again, okay? So update is a method of the dictionary that adds a number of keys onto the existing dictionary. Okay. I may not explain this. I may not have explained this clearly earlier on, so I will try to explain it again now. All right. So let's say, for example, I have. Does the dictionary have limitations, rows or columns? No. Right. Dictionary have no elements. No limitations. It depends on your computer's memory. All right. So let me just explain quickly on the updates first. Right. So let's say if you have new keys that you want to update for your dictionary one. Okay, so how do you do that is in this update method, you would indicate the name of your keys, right? So let's say maybe number of number of PCs. Okay, now the weird thing about this update, sorry, this update function is, sorry, this method is, you should not put quotation marks onto the name that you're giving your key. Okay, so it doesn't take in that quotation. If you put in the quotation mark, it will return an error later on. Okay, let's say for example, number of PCs 5, right? If I run this, I'll actually have an error. Keyword can't be an expression. Okay, so what I can do over here is I would just remove the quotation mark, and this will be fine. All right, can you see that the number of PC has been updated with the value of 5? All right, so this is one way of updating your dictionary. Now, generally, I don't like this idea of updating, all right, because it is not too straightforward. So I like this method better. Okay, you can just remember it this way, right? When you try to do dictionary 1, all right, square bracket a new key, all right, you can just assign it a value, right? This is the easiest way to actually create a key in a dictionary and assign it a new value. Okay, so when should you actually use update? Well, when you have a second dictionary, let's say for example, that has a lot of different values, a lot of different keys, right? Currently, I'm just holding 2 keys. But what happens if you have a second dictionary that have like 5 to 6 keys, right? You wouldn't want to type in one by one using this method, right? You want to just add onto your initial dictionary. Okay, that is where we use the update, right? So I can do dictionary 1 dot update, all right? And inside the update bracket, I will just put dictionary 2. So what's going to happen over here is the entire dictionary 2 is going to be added onto our dictionary 1. All right, and of course, key 1 is being removed because I've popped it, right? So I can just remove this popped over here. All right, so you'll be able to see key 1 here. Okay, so does that answer your question, Andrea? Andrea? All right, you're welcome. Okay, so this is dictionary. Now we are gonna do some exercises on dictionary as well, okay? Dictionaries are cool because it helps us hold information in keys that we can refer to it very quickly, okay? We are going to do one on the counting of words, okay? So let's see. If we have extra time, we will do some exercises on lists as well, okay? So I expect to end by 7, so don't worry. We're gonna clock in more exercises. Okay, so let's see. Dictionary time. Sorry. Let's see, what should we do? Let's say maybe I have a word. Okay, let's say elephant. Okay, I want to I want to write a program that actually count, all right, how many times have a certain alphabet appear on this word elephant. Okay, so I will need to go through each and every word of this elephant, each and every letter, sorry, and see if it's already in my dictionary. If it's not in my dictionary, I will want to create a new key, right, that is of this particular letter, and I want to hold a value, right? And this value actually represents how many times have this particular letter appeared on the word. Okay, so let's do that. Now, before I do that, I can actually show you something else, right? Besides using for element in a list, we can also use for loops in the word, like this, right? Print element. All right, so when I run it, okay, it will print my elephant like this. Oops, sorry. Okay, remember what I mentioned in day 1, right? Strings are basically just a string of characters, right? Each individual character being stringed together to create one particular string, all right? So technically they're kind of like this, but you cannot assign a new value to this string, okay? So let's say, for example, if you want to try word 5, assign a new alphabet of maybe Z. Okay, this doesn't work. All right, it will tell you that a string object does not support item assignment. Right, this is only for lists that you can assign a new item like this, right? For strings, you cannot change it. Okay, they are immutable. Now, for those of you who are interested to learn more about this advanced side of Python, this topic is called mutability. Okay, in layman term, it is whether you can change it or not. right? Mutable, okay? All right, so let's go through this, right? We are going to create a dictionary that holds each and every letter, right? So let's say maybe let's call this word dictionary. Okay, let's assign a empty dictionary. All right, now we will need to go through each and every one of these words, right? For let's say maybe for letter in word. Okay, we want to check whether letter is present in the current dictionary or not. Okay, if it's not present, then we would need to create a new key for this, right? So to check whether it is inside or not, I need to expose you guys to a new concept called membership operator. Okay, so there is such a thing called membership operator. That is your in. Okay, your in keyword. All right. Now remember yesterday we mentioned that you can create conditions using relational operator, right? Today we're going to learn the second method of creating a condition using the membership operator. Okay, membership operator operates in this particular manner. Okay, let's go back to this Python tutor over here. Okay, I was speaking, sorry. If we are to remove, okay, let me just, it's okay. Let's remove all this. Right, let's say I have this dictionary one and I want to print whether there is such a key called name in dictionary one. Okay, you will see that it is true, right? There is such a key called name in dictionary one. Okay, however, if you want to ask for a value, this will return false. Okay, now why is that so? All right, when you are using a membership operator on a dictionary, you are always checking for its key. All right, just like the for loop for dictionaries, right? For element in dictionary one, it will always refer to the key. Okay, it is never to the values. All right, so excuse me. If you want to explore and see whether YY is in one of the values, what you can do is you can use a new method called dot values. Remember how we use dot items to generate a list of items? Not a list of items, sorry. A sequence of tuples consisting the key and value pair. All right. We can use dot values to create a sequence of values. All right. Let's say your YY, 30 and 30 as a view object. Okay, what do I call? Let me just write it down. View object. Okay, it is just temporarily created for you to check if something is inside. So currently I'm checking whether my YY is inside the dictionary values, all right? And it appears to be true. So that is there, right? It is there. Okay, now in is not the only membership operator, right? You can also ask whether your computer is not in. Okay, let's say I have a friend called Michael. Okay, I want to check whether Michael is not inside the dictionary values, all right? And it appears to be true, all right? Because in fact, in dictionary one, there is no such thing as Michael as the value. Okay, so it will appear as true. All right, so now we have learned a second way of creating a condition, right? In or not in, okay? And this is very useful for our project because we need to check whether the letter is there in my dictionary or not. Okay, so Mark asks, in for loops, why is it that we don't initialize the I, all right? When we call a for loop like this for num in nums, we have already initialized it. Okay, that's just how Python works, right? The moment you type in a variable in your for loop, it has been initialized. Okay, and the weird thing about Python is this, right? Since you're in this, I want to just quickly go through this again. For key in dictionary one, all right, we know for sure that this is gonna refer to the keys, right? Print key. Okay, I'm gonna print all the keys out. Now, in a conventional programming language, maybe conventional is not a good word. So in other programming languages, right, when this loop variable is no longer needed, that means at the end of the for loop, when I'm done with it, I shouldn't be able to refer to it again. Okay. However, in Python, the key variable is actually still available at the end of the for loop, okay? Which can be confusing for some of the existing programmers, right? So if some of you have learned Java or even JavaScript, right? Once you are done with a for loop, by right, the variable should go away. That's the use of loop variable, right? We just need it for the loop itself. We don't need it after the loop is done. But in Python, it is still there, okay? So this is the weird part about it, okay? Just a thing to take care of if you're gonna use the same name again and again and again. All right. Okay, so let's go back to our project on the word checking. Okay, so what we're gonna do over here is we're gonna write if, okay, letter in, all right, word underscore dictionary. That means if the letter is already existing inside the word dictionary, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to update the value by 1. That means instead of the E appearing once, now the E has appeared twice, right? So the word underscore dictionary, this dictionary over here, with reference to the particular letter as its key, should have an increase of 1. Okay, now let me just take this very slowly. Okay, as I check through each and every letter in the word, if the letter is in my word dictionary as a key, all right, that means it has already been recorded once, right? So if it has been recorded, I should increase the number by 1, right? Because this is the second occurrence, or maybe or the third, fourth, and so on. Okay. However, if the letter have not appeared before, all right, what? Oops, sorry. Where's my 1? Right. So if the letter has not appeared before, right, then we will want to introduce the letter to the key. Sorry, introduce the key. Sorry, let me just rephrase. Introduce this letter as a key in this dictionary, right? And what should be the initial value? The initial value should be 1, right? Because it's the first time that this letter has appeared in this dictionary. So let's do this, right? Word underscore dictionary, square bracket letter equals to 1, okay? Now, some of you may ask me, why is it letter, right? It's because I am going through each and every letter, right? So let's say, for example, if I check the first letter E, okay, I'm going to refer to my dictionary. Has E appeared before? No, right? So I'm going to assign it with a value of 1. So I have a new value called 1. Okay, now when I go to the second letter, right, for loop will automatically go on to the second letter, right? So you go L. L, has it been there in the dictionary? No, right? So I will introduce a new value, 1 as well. Okay, and the moment it reaches the third one, which is another E, now the computer checks that, hey, this letter is actually in the dictionary as a key, right? So if it's already there, I don't actually need to introduce it again, right? I need to increase the number of value by 1, all right? So instead of 1, this is now going to be 2, right? Move on to the P, H, A, and T, and so forth. Okay, so you will be able to generate the number of letters over there. Okay, so once I'm done with this loop, all right, I can now print that. Let's print something fun, all right? I will print that the word elephant, the word, which is elephant at this moment. Okay, let me just add the quotation mark for it as well. has uh, has a number of that particular letter, right? Now, if I were to print this sentence for every single letter that's in the dictionary, that means I will need to use another for loop, right? To go through each and every letter in the dictionary. Okay, so I'm going to write a second for loop over here, right? So let's use for key in word dictionary. All right, now this is a for loop for going through the number of keys inside the dictionary. All right, the initial for loop is to go through the word itself to find out which are the letters that should be in the dictionary. Okay, now for this number of keys, we are going to print the number, okay, which is key, which is word underscore dictionary square bracket key. All right, this is the value, right? This is the numbers, right? Word dic square bracket key, this will refer to the values, right? The number of alphabets, sorry, the number of letters or alphabets that's appearing on this word. Okay, and then I will put the key here as well. Now, what am I trying to do over here is I'm trying to tell the user, I'm trying to print it out that, hey, this word elephant has like 2 E's, 1 L, 1 P, 1 H, 1 A, 1 N, 1 T, right? So let me just print this. Okay, it's taking a bit of a time. Wow, it's taking longer than expected. Okay, so the elephant has 2 E, 1 L, 1 P, 1 H, 1 A, 1 N, and 1 T. All right, and of course, you can make this to be even more fun by, having your own input. Okay, input a word. Okay, and I can also put in some interesting word like, what are the interesting words? All right, no phobia. Am I spelling this correct? I think so. All right, has 3A, 1R, 1C, 2H, 1N, 2O, 1P, 1B, and 1I. Okay, looks cool. All right, now this gives you an idea of how you can actually use dictionary to check how many times a certain word has appeared in a passage before. Right, currently I'm just checking about the letter, but can I do it on a words? Okay, we can actually do that, right? And I will demonstrate this to you after the break. Okay, now it's 6:04. We're gonna take a short break, right? 5 minutes break, and then when we come back, I am going to copy a passage from somewhere on the internet, and we are actually going to decipher it and find out how many how many times have a certain word occur in this particular passage, right? All right, so let's take a 5 minutes break. Okay, how did the program know that we are looping the letter instead of the entire string when we type for letter in Word? To explain that, let's see. Usually what we put in, okay, let me just try to write it in a huge screen like such. Yeah, okay, let me try to explain to, why is this? Oh, because I'm using screen brush, sorry. Okay, so when we write for something in something, right? We are always referring to this being the loop variable. Okay, that means we are going to initialize a new variable. And the next one, this is going to be the iterable. Okay, new word. So iterable is like something that you can go through one by one. Whenever you see name error, Yufeng, that means your variable is not there yet. Initialize your variable first. Okay, so iterable, there are a few types of iterable. Okay, we have a string. String is an iterable. The list is an iterable. Dictionary is an iterable. There are others, but I'm not going to go into those for now, right? Let's just focus on these three, okay? Now, these being iterables, right, they are being iterated differently, okay? So let's say, for example, I have a string like this. When you're using a for loop over it, it is going to go through one by one, okay? One of these characters at a time, okay? That is when you use string as an iterable. However, when you use a list as an iterable, let's say maybe a ba, cha, and dada. Okay, so when you use a for loop over a list, these elements would be the ones that are going to be stored inside the loop variable. Okay, so depending on the type of iterable that is being used, all right, the loop will be different. Okay, oh, good that you have understood already. All right, but when we are going through dictionary, it is only going to refer to its keys. Remember, dictionary only go through the keys. All right, for this, it is the element. Okay, let's do something interesting. Let's try to clean up a passage and find out how many times a particular word has appeared in a passage. So to do that, we need to find a passage. Let's see. Maybe we do Aesop fables. The frogs and the ox. Oh, this looks cool. Okay, I'm gonna copy this and see how it turns out. Okay, so just let me try it out first, right? So I haven't tried this before. Let's paste it. Oh, interesting. Cool. Cool. Iterable means again. Okay, can. Let me just go back here again. So an iterable is just a data that computer can use a for loop to go through one by one. it's actually an advanced concept, but since we're using for loop anyway, it'd be good to understand this, right? So iterable, it can be your string, can be your list, can be your dictionary. Technically speaking, you can also use sets and tuples as iterable, but since we have not touched on those yet, just remember that you can use string, list, and dictionary as your iterable. Okay, iterable means you can go through the element inside this data one by one. Okay, now integers are not an iterable. Okay, let's say for example integer like this. Okay, you will think that, oh, I can actually go through the integer one by one, but no, that's not how the computer works, right? The computer will actually consume this whole thing as one element, so you cannot go through one by one. However, if it's a string like this, you can actually imagine the computer assigning the string in 6 different boxes. Okay, it is made up of S, T, R, I, and and G, which the computer can go through one by one. Okay, so integers are not an iterable. Okay, so that is the reason why we have to always write for I in range 10, right? You never see me write for I in 10 because it doesn't make sense, right? You need the range function to create a sequence of numbers that you can iterate through, all right? This sequence of numbers, all the way to 9, this is also an iterable, okay? Because you can go through one by one and store it inside the loop variable, okay? All right. Okay, now I am going to maybe use this as the passage. This one looks cool. Okay, I am going to paste this. All right, onto the chat group so that you guys can paste along. All right, we're gonna decipher this entire passage, all right, and see which words comes out the most. Okay. So I can paste it on here. Then all of you can copy and paste it on your own desktop. So we are going to clean up this passage one by one. But before we do the cleanup, let's just save this under a variable called passage. Okay. I am going to do the minusing of all these passages. Okay, let's do passage is assigned the value of since there are multiple lines, let's just put triple line. Okay. To make sure that it's working, let's try to print out the passage. Okay, I managed to print out the passage. All right, make sure you guys are able to print out the passage as well. All right. Okay, now the problem is this, right? The passage is actually an entire string. Okay, how do we actually dissect it in a way that we can break them down into individual words? Okay, we're gonna explore some string formatting and some list formatting as well. We need to use methods. Okay, so the first method that I'm gonna try to teach you guys is the split method. I can't. Braden, you can't what? Can't copy and paste. Oh, really? Okay. All right. Maybe you copy this website. Okay, you can maybe try to copy from this passage instead. Sorry, guys. Maybe there is some conversation chat settings that cannot copy from the Zoom chat. Can you send a text file? I will need to save this as a text file though. I haven't really saved it as a text file. Okay, by the way, for Yufeng, it's because you are printing the entire dictionary. You need to refer to a key. Okay, Yufeng, you need to write this to get the value. Okay. So yeah, we are going to use a method called split. All right. So split is a method that actually gets the string to split up in chunks of like, how do you say this? I'll show you the example real quick and you'll be able to see it for yourself. All right. Seeing is believing. So if I use passage dot split, okay, usually inside this split, this is where we specify what is the character that we use to split stuff. All right. If you don't indicate anything, right, it will split based on the spaces. All right. And this will actually return us with a list. Okay. So let's call this list of words. All right. If I were to run this, and I print the list of words, Okay. Okay, I shouldn't print the passage. This is gonna make things more confusing. Connected. Why am I being disconnected from? Okay, so as you can see, I have split up the message based on the spaces. Okay, and ox came down to a ready pool, right, into individual words. All right, now split is a pretty interesting method for you to actually do cleanup. All right, let's say for example, you don't want to split based on spaces. You want to split based on full stops, right? You can also indicate full stop as your split. We call this the delimiter. Okay, so basically you just indicate what symbol do you want to split it at. Okay, so what's going to happen over here is I can run this, and as you can see, now each element is split when it comes to a full stop. Okay, so it has individual sentences now. All right, so I will just split it based on spaces. Okay, I will just split it based on empty spaces. This will give me an individual word. Okay, so all these are the words that I'm. Okay, let me just clear this and then run this again. These are all the words that I need to count, right? So I have like an ox came down to a reedy pool, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so let's try to count how many times a singular word has occurred throughout this passage. All right, it is the same idea as the alphabet count that we have done before, right? So now that we have a list of words, we need to then, oops, sorry, for, okay, we need to create a dictionary for these words, right? Word dictionary. Okay, empty dictionary. So for element in list of words, oops. Okay, now it depends on whether you want to clean up some of this information or not. Okay, as you can see, some of these words may end with, excuse me, may end with a quotation mark, all right, and a alphabet, right? So even though you have another bigger that appears elsewhere, but because this bigger has a quotation mark and a exclamation mark, this will be a separate word from the initial bigger, right? So if you want to do cleanup on this, what we can do is we can go through each and every element and perform the necessary cleanup. Okay, how do we clean this up? So some examples is if lm dot starts with, okay, let's say it starts with the um, double quotation mark. Okay, so some of the letters actually start with a double quotation mark, right? We will want to only have the quotation mark being removed, right? Let's say, for example, some of the sentence may say like this, right? I am glad, right? And this I over here is actually a new word compared to a different I that appears on the sentence, right? So I want to cut off the first part, right? Remember how we can cut things off with slicing, right? You can slice strings as well. Okay, so we can do lm slice from 1 to n. Okay, now remember if we are going to change the element that's in the list, we need to refer to its index, right? So this lm is not going to work. All right, we need to refer to its index number. So instead of lm, we actually need to do for I in range of length of the list of words. Okay. All right. So basically the idea is this, right? If I were to make some changes to the elements in a list, we will always use for I in range because we are making changes. All right. So if list of words, square bracket, I not one, right? Starts with a quotation mark. What we would do is we want to, oops, the variable is wrong. We want to change this of words, okay, is equals to, sorry, I is equals to the list of words I, but then slice from 1 to the end. Okay, now why is it 1? All right, because if I slice from 0, it will include the quotation mark as well. Okay, however, if I slice from 1, it will only take any character from your quotation mark onwards. Okay, and I replace it back to the list of words at this particular index position. And you'll be able to see that some of these words that starts with a double quotation mark, let's say, for example, where is it? Where is it? I saw it just now. Ah, here. Oh, right. This will be then removed. Okay. Now let's just try this out. Okay, to see if it actually does remove it before we move on to our next step. Okay. Usually when we create a huge project, we will want to do step by step, right? So let's print list of words again. Okay, let's see my O. All right, so my O has now removed in terms of my quotation mark. See, the O quotation mark is gone. All right, so now it's just an ordinary O. Okay, so the next step to remove is some of the sentences actually ends with comma. All right, and some of the sentences actually end with another quotation mark, right? So if those that ends with quotation mark, usually you need to end up slicing off the symbol that's in front of the quotation mark as well, right? So what I can do over here is I need to do another. So I am also going to do if list of words square bracket I dot ends with single double, right? Ends with a double quotation mark. Then I will need to do list of words. I want you to slice from the beginning all the way to the last two characters. Okay, it is not including the last two characters. It will just slice up to this point. All right. And why do I use if instead of Alif? All right. Now, I use if over here is because even if the starts with condition has been evaluated as true, right? I also want it to check the ending. Okay. So this is me trying to get a computer to check a second time, even though the first condition has been evaluated as true. All right. So let's do this and see if, all right, looks cleaner. All right, so all the quotation marks are no longer there, right? The ending with quotation mark ones are no longer there. What does 1, comma, and what does comma -2 means? All right, this is slicing. This is me trying to slice the word. Okay, so what happens here is, let's say for example, I have a word called bamboo. But this is the starting of a quotation, right? Sorry. Let's say maybe this is one of the word itself. Okay, so in a passage, sometimes you will have quotation marks trying to tell the dialogue. Okay, so what I want to do is I just want to have the word. I don't want to have the quotation mark. So what I will want to do is I will want to slice all the way from this point all the way to the end. Okay, so in a string, the first character is indicated by the 0 index number, right? So when I do 1 colon empty, that means I will slice from index 1 onwards to the end of the word. Okay, and if I do colon -2, that means I would slice a word from the starting, right? If I don't indicate any start, it will go all the way up to -2, right? Remember, -2 means this character over here, right? Up to. So all this will be sliced off. All right, so this is what I'm doing with the slicing operator. Look carefully at your conditions, Braden. The second condition, it's wrong. It's not equals. If list of words start, it's not if. The if is here. If ends with Braden. Okay, so now let me continue. Okay, now that's not the only thing that we want to remove, right? There is also some other exclamation, some other marks that we have. All right. So let's see. Does not end with a numeric number. Okay, I want to try something out. Okay, so let's say if list of words, scribble I, dot ends with ends with, let's say, this numeric. Oh no, it will only give me true or false. Okay, if it ends with a comma, all right, or if it ends with a full stop. Okay, I'm just gonna do this. Okay, then we will clean it up to the last character. Okay, when I run this, okay, now I should see only words. I shouldn't have any punctuation mark in my words. Okay, let me just look at the chat and see what's wrong. Okay, good. Braden, you found out your mistake. Okay, so my first condition is to check whether the word starts with quotation mark. Okay, and then my second condition is whether the word ends with quotation mark. Okay, and my last condition is to check whether the word ends with comma or full stop. Okay, so this is just me cleaning up the data, right? To make sure that only words are left behind. Okay, so here, once I've cleaned up the data, it is time for us to do our filtering. Okay, let's see. For word in list of words, all right? So if the word has not been appearing in my word dictionary before, okay, I'm doing it the other way around now, right? To show you that it actually worked this way as well. So if the word has not appeared in my dictionary before, then I would introduce it to my word dictionary. Okay, this is the first time that the word has appeared. All right, then I can use else to tell the computer that, hey, if it appeared before, then can you increase the value by 1 for me? All right, so at this point, when I print my word dictionary, I should be able to see a list of words, all right, followed by their word count. Okay, computer is running. Let's just give it some time to run. Okay, so we are able to see that this is the number of times a particular word has appeared on the passage. Okay, now the next challenge is do you want to find out what is the most amount of word that is appearing in this particular word count? Okay, let's say if I want to have the top 5, all right, how do we actually do that? Okay, you can do it one by one, all right, so I can, the easiest way, all right, which is also the most time consuming way, is to go through one by one, get the value, all right, and then pop the key out. Okay, pop it out, all right, and then the second time I will also run through the list again. Okay, and then pop out the highest one, right, to get out my top 3 letters. Okay, top 3 words, not letters. Sorry, I always confuse words and letters. Right, so I am going to do this. Okay, so maybe I will just do this first, right? For word in word. Okay, for key in word dictionary. Okay, I'm just gonna print out the number of times that came out first, right? Print the word word key. Sorry, I need to use a single quotation mark because I'm using double quotation mark as my string indicator. Has appeared this number of times. Okay, so let's try this out. Okay, so we have the word and one time ox. So it prints out a lot of different sentences. Okay, just at a glance of it, obviously the word the appear the most with 7 times and frog appear 5 times. Okay. And for 4 times, there is the word and, which is one of the most commonly used words. Then at 3 times, we have said, much bigger, all 3 times. Okay, so these top 3 words may not be the most accurate one. When you scroll fast, it's so trippy. Oh, okay, sorry, I should scroll slowly then. Okay. If I were to go through each and every value to find out which word appears the most, okay, I can do it like this. Let's assign a new variable called most appear. Okay, and let's assign it with an empty string. Excuse me. Okay, and then we have times appeared. Okay, 0. Okay, so what I can do over here is, if I want to go through each and every key to find out about its value, to see if it's bigger than the one that is appear the most, all right, I would go through it like this, right? For key in word dictionary, okay, I need to go through one value by one value, all right, to check if the number of times that this word has appeared, is it bigger than the previous word? Okay, so if the word underscore dictionary at key, sorry, square bracket key is bigger than, all right, the times appeared. Okay, this is me trying to check whether the number of times that this word has appeared, all right, is indeed bigger than the previous one that I've checked. If it is, then I would assign my times appeared with this particular value. Okay, and not only that, I will also assign the word that appear the most as its key. Okay, sorry, not keyboard interrupt. Okay, let me just try to explain this real quick. So every time I run through a key in the word dictionary, I check to see if the value that is being held by this key, right, which is the number of times this word has appeared, right, is bigger than the time that has appeared of the previous word. When I first initialize it, the word that appeared the most is an empty string. Okay, and the number of times this empty string has appeared is 0. So obviously, when I go through the first word, which is the word "and," all right, the value of 1 would be bigger than the times appeared, which is 0. Okay, so, and because that is the case, I am going to set this times appear variable with the value that is being held by the key "n," okay, which is the number 1 right now. Okay, and the word that appear the most will now be the key itself, right? The word "n" is a key, right? Remember? So at this point, my most appear word will be "n," and the number of times it has appeared is 1. Then I go on to my next iteration to check on the ox. Okay, ox has appeared 1 time, which is the same as my "n," right? So it wouldn't replace it until I reach the word "two." Okay, "two" is a word that has appeared 2 times, right? So if it appears 2 times, obviously it is more than the number 1 over here for your times appear, right? Because the number 1 over here is held by the key "n," right? So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to replace the variable times appeared by the value of 2, which is 2 over here. Okay, now the number of times that appear the most is 2 times. Okay, and the word that appeared 2 times is 2, right? It has now been assigned to the most appeared. Okay, understand? So let me just try to visualize this by using a variable. I have a variable that keep tracks of the most appeared word. Okay, and another variable that keep tracks of the number of times it has appeared. Okay, and only when the word that has appeared more than the number of times appeared of the previous letter, this will be replaced with a new value. Okay, all right, so when I run this, and at the end of the day, I print the word, sorry, the word most appears the most in this passage with the times appeared number of times. Okay, so if I run this, if I'm correct, I should be able to get the word "the" appears the most in this passage with 7 number of times. Okay, I'm gonna comment this out so that it gets shorter. Okay, all right. Now with this program, you can now copy any passage in the internet, right, and try to paste it here, and then you will filter the same way. Of course, some of your cleaning up may have to change, right? Because some of the passage may end with an exclamation mark or a question mark instead. Then you would have to change this to also include your question mark and your exclamation mark. Okay, so let me just do one more example, all right, to show you how this passage can clean things up and find out the word that appears the most. And obviously, you will always see the word "the" a lot because "the" is one of the most commonly used words, right? So let's go to Straits Times. Wow, why is Straits Times loading so slow? Okay, COVID cases. Okay, perfect. Okay, I can actually try to copy. Oh no, it will copy the advertisement as well. Oh no. Disaster. Actually disaster. Anyway, no, I'm not gonna do that. It's too troublesome. All right. So hopefully this gives you an idea of how dictionary can be used to clean things up. All right, to keep track of two things. And let's see, are there any problems? Okay, so this is where we explore the dot split string method, right? There is another method called dot join. Okay, so dot splits up a string to become a list, right? This is using dot split. And if you want a list to go back to become a string, you can use your dot join. Okay, let me show you an example of this. So let's say, for example, I have a list of random characters. I have a cat. Okay. Key error and key error means you are unable to find this particular word. Okay. When you see key error, it means you are trying to refer to a key that is not existing in the dictionary. So let me just try to replicate that error to you. Okay, let's say, for example, date 1, I have key 1, value 1, key 2, value 2. Okay, so I have a dictionary that has key 1 and value 1, right? And I try to print dictionary 1 at key 3. This is where you get your key error, right? Because the dictionary does not contain a key called key 3, right? So this will get your key error. And one way to go around key error is to use the .get method instead, right? But I don't want to confuse the method too much, so I wouldn't go through that. But if you're interested to learn more about it, you can try to find out on your on the internet, right? .get method. Okay, this will not raise an error if the key is not available. All right. So I'm just gonna do a quick demonstration. Let's say, for example, dictionary 1 dot get key 3. Okay, one more bracket. Okay, it will show you none instead. That means there is no such thing as a key 3. All right, and if you want to give it alternate value, there is no such key. Okay, it will print this value instead. Right, this is the default value if there is no such key. If the value, if the key 3 doesn't exist and you want to print something out still, this is the default value, right? This is your .get method. Okay, you will usually use .get when you want to access your dictionary without the risk of facing key errors. Okay, so that's that for Sarah. Now, let's say if I have list 1 over here and I want to join this into a single sentence, all right? I can do dot join and then bracket. Inside the bracket, I will put the list 1. Okay, and this is me joining the elements in the list together to form a string. Okay, so if you don't believe me, I can just print this. And see, I have a cat. Okay, now what is going to be indicated over here between your quotation mark is the, remember what I mentioned earlier, delimiter. Okay, what do you put in between these elements? Okay, in other words, what do you want to use as the glue? Okay, so if I were to add a comma, between all these lists, can you see that there's an I, comma, have, comma, comma, cat, right? And it only appears between the elements, all right? It doesn't appear at the end, it doesn't appear in front, all right? And if you want to have spaces, you can just use a space like this. Ta-da! All right, this is how you join a list to become a string. Okay, so there are a lot of different methods for strings, lists, and dictionaries and stuff, right? But we usually use only a few that we keep using, right? We only use a few of them. We don't use all of the methods. And when we need to find out about certain methods, we can just look up online to see what they actually do. Okay, you only need to remember a certain number of them. All right, your dot append, dot pop, dot insert. These are three of the most used methods because you need to manipulate the elements in your list, right? And for strings, you will usually use dot join to try to form a singular string, dot split to clean up, and you will usually use dot is numeric and stuff as well. So let's say, for example, I have a string called ABC123. Okay, if I were to print string dot is numeric, this is a method that checks whether all the character that's inside the string is a numeric number. Is a number, right? Numeric means number. So if some of them are not numbers, it will return false. Okay, and then we also have something called the string dot is alpha. Okay, alpha is not the alpha and beta kind of alpha, right? Not alpha wolf kind of alpha, but alpha means alphabet, right? Whether all the characters in string is an alphabet. Quite useful as well, right? So sometimes you want to check whether the last letter is an alphabet or not. Okay. And then you also have print string dot is lnum. Okay, lnum stands for alphanumeric. Okay, and in this case, I have alphabets, I have numbers. This is alphanumeric. And why is this important? It's when you want to filter through your words and you want to delete away all your symbols, right? Because when you have a word, when you have a symbol that's inside a string, let's say maybe an exclamation mark, this will appear false, right? Because it's not only alphanumeric numbers that's inside, right? There are some form of symbols that's inside. Okay, and then we want to remove these symbols. Okay, so these are some of the methods for string. Okay, and then you will also have your starts with and ends with. Okay, this is to check whether it starts with a certain character or ends with a certain character, right? I can check whether it starts with A, which in this case it's true, right? Because it actually starts with an A. And I can also print to check if the string ends with not only can you put a singular character, you can actually put a substring. Okay, let me just try to write this down. A substring. All right, that means a shorter string. Okay, let's see, ends with 1, 2, 3, right? A substring like this. It will also be, okay, it's false because I have exclamation mark, right? So if I add the exclamation mark at the back, true. Okay, so this is some of the methods for you to generate conditions, right? Whether to check whether a string starts with A or to check whether a string ends with a certain alphabet. Okay, and the time now is 6:52. I think I would take a pause here. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask on your Zoom chat. And I'll also show you my day 3 replit. I can actually share my replit files with you guys if you want to refer to them. Because they're all public, right? Okay. All right. So, yep. Time is 6:52. How do you comment out the whole chunk at the same time? You mean comment? All right. So if you want to comment out the whole chunk at the same time, you just highlight the number of lines and then you do a command or control slash. Okay. If you're using Windows, control slash. If you're using Mac, command slash. Okay. All right. I understand that some of you can't wait to go for dinner, right? Because it's 7 p.m. I mean, I am, and some of you may have different time zones as well, so I'm not too sure. Okay, so with that said, what's the function of isLnum? Oh, okay, isLnum is a method that belongs to a string to check whether all of the characters that's inside is alphanumeric. All right, every single character inside this string must be alphanumeric in order for it to be true. Okay, if it turns out to be false, that means one of the characters are not alphanumeric. Okay, Ken? Chaminhan? What is alphanumeric? Alphanumeric means um, it contains alphabets and numbers. That's alphanumeric, right? Sometimes when you create a password, the requirement is to have an alphanumeric password, right? You need to contain both alphabets and numbers, right? That's alphanumeric. Okay, you're welcome. So I am going to stop my share now. What is numeric? Okay, numeric is to check for is it a number? Okay, I am going to write down the hashtag, right? Whether all characters in string are numbers. Okay, and then this checks for alphabets. All of them, right? Remember all of the characters, right? Lnum is alpha numeric. Okay, Ken. Yep. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to pass the time back to